Welcome to another episode of our NFL season preview. If you've seen any of the other episodes, you know what we're getting right into. Today we're going to go through the New York Jets. We've already worked through about a third of the league at this point, going team by team, talking about their previous season, what we expect for this season, their additions, their subtractions, any pending moves that still may be available for the teams, what their schedule looks like, top positional players throughout the roster, and if these teams can make the playoffs, be a Super Bowl contender, or if they're just looking for another quarterback next year. But we're going to get into the New York Jets. You know the drill. We're going to go through each topic over here on the left and discuss each one of them in detail. So we'll start with last season. So last season, they were 4-13. Zach Wilson was injured for part of the season. I mean, it was not a good season. It was Robert Saleh's first season. They had injuries throughout this entire roster. So it was kind of a blown season. I mean, nothing you could really take away much from due to all the injuries that they had. Their defense was decimated throughout the year. They lost so many people early on in the year that it just kind of threw the entire season away and threw everything off track. Zach Wilson wasn't what people expected him to be, but he really wasn't put in the best of positions due to the circumstances surrounding him with the rest of the roster and all the injuries. So it's just a quick preview of last season. The team, the coaching staff stays together, no real changes. As far as additions this year, we'll start with the draft before we get into free agency. So with the draft, their first overall pick, they took Sauce Gardner. Going to be a great cornerback in this league. They hope he's a franchise cornerstone for them in the secondary for many years to come. He didn't allow a touchdown in 3 years at Cincinnati. The opposing quarterbacks had around a 28.1 quarterback rating whenever throwing at him. So amazing in coverage. I mean, that's a statistic that we know that he did not give up a touchdown pass in 3 years. He has 4.41 speed. So, I mean, super fast. What you need in today's NFL at your cornerback position. I mean, I feel like he's going to come in immediately and help. This team was 32nd in the points allowed per game at 29, almost 30 points per game given up. So defense was a focal point. Their defense was decimated with the injuries, like I mentioned earlier. But they got to stop the pass first. I mean, you remember the Raiders game where they gave up the long pass. I mean, you don't want to see that anymore if you're a Jets fan. The only question with Sauce Gardner is that he played so much zone coverage at Cincy. Is it all going to translate over to the NFL where it's going to be mainly a man coverage scheme, him being CB1 in this defense? So that's the only knock on him maybe, but I mean it still could easily translate over and he could be great. At 10, they took Garrett Wilson, who some people had as their number one wide receiver off the board. He goes off the board after Drake London to Atlanta. He has 4.38 speed. I mean, he's probably going to be the number 2 wide receiver in this offense, but I mean, you got Elijah Moore in the slot. Corey Davis could still be solid. I mean, if you look at their preseason last year, they were great together between Zach Wilson and Corey Davis, but Garrett Wilson looks to come in and make a great Wilson-Wilson combo duo with Zach and just elevate this offense to where it needs to be because it was in the bottom 5 of the league in almost every category last year. So, with that said, I mean, I'm intrigued to see what Garrett Wilson brings to the table. He and Chris Olave were 2 great receivers at Ohio State. What they do now, they're separated. I mean, this wide receiver group is pretty good for the Jets, so Zach Wilson should be able to get the ball around to everyone he needs to and get some points put up on the board this year. Then the steal of the draft maybe was Jermaine Johnson dropping all the way to 26. Some mocks had him top 10, one of the top defensive ends in the draft. He was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He had 12 sacks and 18.5 tackles for loss. So, I mean, great numbers. And another issue that the Jets had was that they were horrible against the run as well. I mean, they were horrible in every statistical category. But he's excellent against the run, so that gives them even more of a strength in this D-line. I mean, look at this D-line with Carl Lawson, Quentin Williams, Franklin Myers, and Johnson. I mean, these 4 right here, they could be a stud group for sure, but we'll get into that in a minute. And then in the second round, they surprised a lot of people by taking Breece Hall. I mean, they must have really loved him because Michael Carter, he has highs and his lows last year, but how much of that was due to the offensive line and how much of that was due to him himself? But Brees Hall could be the top running back out of this draft. He was the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. And like I said earlier, the Jets ranked dead bottom or near the bottom in every category just about. And they were 28th in points per game at 18.2. So they take two offensive players, two offensive starters potentially, with two early picks. So they're going all in. I mean, they were rebuilding all around pretty much with all the injuries and all the departures that they had. But two big name players are definitely on the offense. So we'll see what Brees Hall and Garrett Wilson have to add to this team. So now we get into free agency. With free agency, they re-signed Connor McDermott, keep him in there at center. Good for Zach Wilson. They re-signed Braxton Barrios. Give him a little depth at this receiver position. He had a solid season last year for being who he is. But I mean, these are going to be your top three receivers. He could be a fourth receiver here in the slot for sure, and then Mims will probably get some run as well. So a good depth player to bring back for him for sure. They signed DJ Reed, which was a huge signing for them. He was probably the best possible free agent cornerback outside of Carlton Davis and J.C. Jackson. So a huge pickup for the Jets in that regard. He played for Robert Saleh in San Francisco, so he's going to be used to the defensive scheme, which is great. Plug and play player for sure in this defense. He was the eighth best cornerback per PFF last year. So I mean, like I said, another solid pickup for sure. Third best free agent cornerback and the eighth best overall. So it's definitely helpful for this defense. Who I mean, like I've said time and again, were horrible. I mean, it was partly due to the injuries though. Um, he's only 25 years old, so he's a young stud cornerback in this league. And I mentioned earlier they had issues against the run. He was fifth best cornerback per PFF against the run in 2021. So I mean, he's solid all around. It's going to be a great pickup from Seattle for sure. Uh, the other big free agent signing is Jordan Whitehead. They got him on a 2-year, $14 million contract, which was great money in my eyes compared to all the other safety money that was being thrown around this offseason. So they add him in. He was great versus the run. Another Jets issue. I mean, they're just stacking up with these run defenders. I mean, they got Jermaine Johnson, excellent. They got DJ Reed, who's excellent. Jordan Whitehead, who's excellent, all against the run. The only knock with Jordan Whitehead is he struggles in man coverage, which may be, I mean, that's probably adding on to why they took cornerback at pick one. They need to solidify the spots around him on the defense as far as man coverage if he's going to struggle, as in Jordan Whitehead. But still a solid pickup for a safety position for them. Then they go out and sign C.J. Uzomah from the Bengals. Solid tight end. I mean, bring him in with Tyler Conklin. Two 1-2 punch. They're two above average receiving tight ends. But the thing on C.J. Uzomah is that he's a great blocker too. I have a video right here from Twitter. You can see Uzomah's up here at the top, and watch him on this run right here, just making a hole for Joe Mixon. Right here. I mean, so you add him in with the into the run game. It's just going to further the development of all these running backs. So they got C.J. Uzomah, who had 49. He went for 49 receptions, almost 500 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So a solid offensive producer from the tight end position, along with all these wide receivers that they have. You then pair him with Tyler Conklin. So a solid 1-2 punch for sure, especially whenever you compare those two to the tight ends that Zach Wilson had last year in Croft and Ryan Griffin, sorry. They combined for about, 43 receptions, 400 yards, and 3 touchdowns between the two tight ends last year. Whereas I just said Uzomah went for basically 5,505 himself, so he outproduced them. And then you add in Tyler Conklin, who had even better numbers, 61, 593, and 3, which would have been the most receiving receptions by a Jet tight end since Keller in 2011. So a solid 1-2 combination for the tight end position. You add them into the running backs and the wide receivers, and it's looking good on offense for sure. Another key signing that they brought in a ton of additions on this offense and on defense. This entire team. They bring in Laken Tomlinson from the Niners, um, Pro Bowler in 2021. They got rid of Greg Van Roten, who was a failed project. Um, the scheme's basically the same as what he was doing in San Francisco. So again, another plug and play player uh, like DJ Reed. So I mean, this is going to be a great addition to this offensive line. Improve the offensive line, improve the run game. They were 29th in sacks allowed last year at 3.1 per game. Part of that was the offensive line. Part of that was Zach Wilson and his decision making. But I mean, if you give him more time, that's just going to help him grow as a quarterback for sure. So a big pickup there. They got they also did the 5th-year extension on Quentin Williams, one of the top interior defensive linemen in the league. It's going to shore up the middle for sure. Only he and Daron Payne had 35 or more defensive stops over the past 2 seasons as far as interior defensive linemen. So a solid player right there. So a lot of additions for sure on the offensive end. So let's get straight into their losses. I mean, not much to lose on a team that was young and 4-13. Crowder was out. They lost him or let him go. It was one of his worst seasons statistically, but that was also partially due to his injuries. But I mean, you basically have Elijah Moore filling in for him. He's kind of more of a slot receiver. But I mean, with these three younger wide receivers, they moved on from Crowder, who's older, going to Buffalo. Keelan Cole's out, still a free agent, but I doubt they're going to bring him back with this group that they have here with the wide receivers. Like I said, Croft and Griffin are going at tight end position, which is great for Zach Wilson and this offense because they were doing nothing for him. Morgan Moses is out, but they replaced him. They bring in Laken Tomlinson, and they also get I feel like it's a pretty solid backup in Nate Herbig. I mean, the huge guard from Philadelphia definitely can fill in for any of these if they get any injuries on this offensive line. So a solid pickup there. Shaq Lawson is out. Wasn't doing too much for him. I mean, so didn't really lose much. And then they got Carl Lawson coming back from injury. And CJ Mosley still on the better end of his career, but he's not what he used to be when he was in Baltimore, but they're still paying him. So that's kind of a problem. But we look at their strengths as a team. Didn't have many strengths at all last year, but being that they were 4-13 and young, the offense should be fun now. They have Zach Wilson going into his 2nd year, not a rookie. They have additional offensive weapons, especially at the running back positions. 1-2 punch of Michael Carter, Tevin Williams, I expect to be phased out. Their offensive line is looking better. Their tight end group could be a strength, especially based on the numbers that they put up last year. And if all these wide receivers hit, if Elijah Moore bounces back to have a great second season, if Garrett Wilson hits as possibly the top wide receiver in the draft, I mean, this offense could be, if they're average, that's going to be a strength for the Jets compared to where they were last year. But then you look at the defense. I mean, the defense should be solid for sure compared to last year. This defensive line should be well above average. I mean, they have Carl Lawson, who was injured all last year. They averaged less than 2 sacks per game, which was 25th in the league. But I mean, Carl Lawson's outstanding. He was underrated whenever he was in Cincy. Quentin Williams, I already spoke about all his defensive stops. John Franklin Myers, maybe the most underrated defender on this team. Jermaine Johnson, who was a top 10 pick in some mock drafts, they have him starting on the other opposite of Carl Lawson. So I mean, all the way down this defensive line should be outstanding. They also have a much improved cornerback group compared to last year. Again, another lowly statistic. They were 30th in offensive pass yards per game, giving up 260 per game. I mean, there was only 4 teams, I think, that gave up over 250, one of them being the Jets. But, I mean, bring in Sauce Gardner. DJ Reed, that's a great 1-2 combo right there for sure. Still got LaMarcus Joyner. Jordan Whitehead hopes to come in and be solid like he was in Tampa Bay. So, I mean, his cornerback group should be much better than what they were last year. Weaknesses, they had plenty last year. The injury bug was one weakness for sure last year. But Zach Wilson, let's hope he's not a weakness again this year. Last year, he did not have a great year. He has the weapons around him. I hope he's not the weakness this year. I'm kind of biased towards the Jets. I want them to be good. I want them to be what they used to be and finally be a playoff contender again. But Zach Wilson, he didn't prove he was the franchise quarterback last year. Can he do it this year? I hope so, but it's still to be determined. His weapons were average last year. He had the injury bug throughout the offense, throughout the entire team. Um, he didn't throw for over 300 yards the entire season, and Mike White came in as a temporary starter and put up franchise numbers. So I'm curious to see what happens with Zach Wilson. He had a 9 touchdown to 11 interceptions last year, so his decision making wasn't the best. I mean, hopefully showing up the offensive line will help improve his play. Another potential weakness is the running back room. Again, last year, how much of that was the offensive line? How much of that was that you had a rookie in Michael Carter, Tevin Coleman, who's not outstanding? I mean, it was just a bunch of shifting around with the running back room last year. And then linebacker play. Still got C.J. Mosley, but I'm worried that he's maybe on the decline of his career. But, I mean, was the linebacker group really bad last year? Probably not. It was more along the lines of all the injuries they had surrounding the linebacker group. They can only cover up so much whenever you have so many holes elsewhere on the defense. So it's probably not truly a weakness, but if they can be average this year at the linebacker group, pair that with an average secondary and then an above average defensive line, this defense could carry this team to keeping them in a lot of games for sure. So as far as the outlook on both sides of the ball, I already spoke on this offense. I'm very curious to see if they can put up better numbers. I mean, they were horrible in points per game. I believe I said they averaged around 18 points per game. There's no reason that this offense, Corey Davis, a solid number one receiver. Garrett Wilson could be a great 2. Elijah Moore should be great in the slot. I mean, this should be a up-tempo offense. Then they have Laken Tomlinson, the great addition from San Francisco. They got the first-round pick from Elijah Vera Tucker last year. Mekhi Becton already addressing the rumors of him being overweight and not trying to perform and prepare for this year. So he's coming back with something to prove. They got the upgraded tight end room. They drafted a great running back to pair with Michael Carter. I mean, this offense should be much improved. There should be no excuse for Zach Wilson this year to not be an improved quarterback for sure. Then you look at the defense. I've already hit on it so many times, but this defensive line should be the strong point of this defense. They should be getting to the quarterback way more than what they were last year. They averaged less than 2 sacks per game last year. I mean, if not sacks, they should be getting pressure on the quarterback, on the opposing quarterback many times per game. Still, I mean, the secondary, we're going to see what Sauce has to offer, especially in man coverage, but the secondary should be much improved, basically due to having healthy players. So, I mean, it's going to be intriguing to see what they do. I mean, Robert Saleh is going into his second year. He has a better understanding of what he needs to be doing as a coach. We'll see what happens. I mean, Mike LaFleur, is he as good as his brother? We'll see, hopefully. But it does look more promising for sure for the Jets on both sides of the ball this year. So as far as their projected wins, let me bring up their schedule. So here's their schedule. We'll get into it. Vegas has them only winning 5.5 games. That's the Vegas projection. So we'll run through their schedule, break down each game, discuss what we expect from each matchup briefly. I mean, it's still early, and it's not even the preseason yet. Week 1, they play the Ravens. Lamar is, I mean, we'll go ahead and just put the L up there. Lamar is looking to be an MVP candidate. I feel like he's going to bounce back, be super strong this year. Jets will improve, but not that much. Week 2, probably another slow start to the season. The Browns, they may have Jacoby Brissett starting. They may still have Baker. I feel like this could be a close game. The Browns may be one of the regressing teams this year, especially with the Deshaun Watson debacle that's going on. Jets keep it close but don't get the win here. I mean, and then the Bengals. I mean, they do have a rough start. They play the AFC North 3 straight weeks, which is one of the best divisions in football this year, probably. Super Bowl last year. I mean, I don't think they can score with them. So they're starting 0-3. So then the media is starting to chirp. Zach Wilson, what is he going to do? Is he the quarterback of the future? But they get the Steelers in week 4. So all 4 AFC North teams to open the season. Uh, they get the win. They get their first win here. The defense is still good in Pittsburgh, but this offense I feel like is going to struggle. Uh, Matt Canada's still there. They have, it doesn't matter, Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett. This team's offense, I feel like it's going to struggle. Offensive line is somewhat improved there, but this defensive line should wreak havoc on that O-line in Pittsburgh. Dolphins in week 5. The Jets start off slow. Everyone's starting to feel like they're another team that's still going to be rebuilding still more. They're going to be horrible. They're going to be a bottom 5 team. But I feel like they come out in week 5 and surprise the Dolphins. The Dolphins made so many offseason moves, but their problem's still at quarterback. I still don't believe Tua is the answer. With that said, I feel like this D line, I mean, it's going to be a focal point this year. They're going to, when Tua is pressured, he's horrible. And he's going to be pressured so much in this game that I feel like the Jets surprise everyone, get back-to-back wins. Week 6, they play the Packers. I mean, the Packers, they probably have a top 3 defense this year. And as much as Zach Wilson and his offense may improve, they can't get the win in Lambeau. Week 7, they go to the Broncos. I've spoke about this in my other videos. With the AFC West, that division is going to be such a dogfight week in and week out that whenever the AFC West teams play outside of their division, they have to pick up every win to try to get wild cards because they're just going to be beating up on each other within the division. I feel like the Broncos get the win here. So they're 2-5 going into week 8. Not the best. Things are looking mediocre at best at this point, but they get the Pats in week 8 at home, and they get the win. Mac Jones, I mean, they brought in Devontae Parker. Is that his best weapon? The offense is horrible. Who's going to be calling plays for him? We still don't know. The Patriots fans better hope it's not Matt Patricia. Is it Joe Judge? I mean, what's their best option? Letting Bill Belichick? I mean, maybe, but I feel like Mac is just in a bad situation and set up to fail. Week 9, they unfortunately get the Bills. The Bills are Super Bowl favorites going into this year, so I can't give the Jets a win here as much as I'd want them to. Semi-early bye, good break for them, time to regroup. They're 3-6 going into the bye, not the best, but could be worse, could be better. Week 11, they play at the Patriots. I just spoke on how horrible the Patriots offense is going to be. I mean, I feel like this team, Bill Belichick's the greatest coach of all time, but I feel like this team could be on the decline. You know, I mean, the roster is not great. They made questionable draft decisions. So I feel like this could be the first time that the Jets get a sweep on the Pats in God knows how long, which would be great for New York. If nothing else, the Jets fans will be happy that they swept the Patriots. So 4-6. Yeah, 4-6 going into week 12. And they play the Bears. Justin Fields is going to be throwing to himself a majority of the game. He's probably going to be running for his life. They did not do anything to improve that offense. Darnell Mooney is their number 1 option. They drafted Bayless, I may be mispronouncing that, Jones, in the 3rd round. That was their first offensive pick. They got a bunch of day 3 offensive linemen. So, I mean, some of those could hit, but it's not going to be enough for the Jets to not win this game. Justin Fields would be lucky to put up 10 points. And with this defense, they should be able to hold them to 10 points or less, and this offense should easily put up 17, 20 points in this game. Week 13, they go to the Vikings. I'm curious to see if the new head coach can push them over the hump. I feel like they can get more out of this offense and defense besides being mediocre. And with that said, I feel like the Jets cannot get the win in Minnesota. They're playing for a wild card spot. Bills, there's nothing to need to extrapolate on here. They're Super Bowl favorites. So right now we're at week 15 and we are 5-7. No, 5-8. 5-8. Not horrible, not the best. Already an improvement for last year. From last year, 4-13. We're already at 5-8 through 14 weeks. They do play the Lions in Week 15. Uh, Between Week 15 and Week 16, Lions and Jags, one of these teams are going to take a step towards the future. It could be both, but I want to say odds are the Jets can get one of these two wins, two home games, Lions and Jags. Does Jared Goff make the Lions lose? Does Trevor Lawrence take that next step along with Zach Wilson? I'm not sure which one of these is going to happen, but the Jets pick up one of these wins out of these 2 weeks. Week 17, they play at the Seahawks. Seahawks, unfortunately, may be playing for a number one seed at this point. I mean, a number one pick at this point. Definitely not a number one seed. But if they're playing for a number one pick, we know what Drew Lock and Geno Smith did not do for the entire season. And that's going to give the Jets another opportunity to get a win here. They finish up the season with the Dolphins. Unfortunately, the Dolphins are probably playing for a wild card position at this point. And it's in Miami. The Jets want to end the season on a high note, but I don't think they can get the win. And they'll split there. I don't see them foreseeing them sweeping both the Dolphins and the Patriots this year. But with that said, I do have them going 7-10 this year. If you're a Jets fan, I would assume that you would love to hear that your team went from 4-13 to 7-10. Everything's looking up for the future. At 7-10, I mean, this team is a very young team. Things are looking great. So, I mean, 7-10 is my final prediction, and I mean, you have to be ecstatic if you're a Jets fan for sure. So now looking at the top players in their position. With each video, if you've seen the other ones, I want to look through the roster. Who can be a top 5 player at that position? Who can be a top 10 player? As far as top 5 players in the NFL at their respective positions, the only one I see on this roster is possibly Quentin Williams. Can he take that jump to be the top 5 interior defensive lineman? I feel like he easily can. He's going into his 5th year. This is a year for him to step up for sure. We've spoke about the statistics of how many defensive stops he's getting, so he could definitely be a top 5 defensive lineman. As far as top 10, Quentin Williams easily, obviously. I feel like Carl Lawson. I said John Franklin Myers may be the most underrated player on this defense, but Carl Lawson may also be that player. He was out all last year. In Cincy, he was one of the top defensive linemen. I mean, he was well above average in the league and was very underrated and overlooked. In 2020, he was the 8th best defensive lineman against the run at 84 point something PFF grade. He's great with getting pressure. So I feel like he could possibly take a bounce back year after being off last year and be a top 10 defensive end. It's kind of pushing it to be top 10, but if he's top 15, that's great for the Jets. DJ Reed, he was top 10 last year as a cornerback as far as PFF grades. I feel like he can continue to do that, especially being in a Robert Saleh defense. And one that I would like to see is Jordan Whitehead. He struggles in man coverage, like I said earlier, but he could still be great. He's great against the run. And with that said, I feel like he could be a top 10 safety. I mean, Saleh's the defensive coordinator, so I'm curious to see if he could take that step up and be a top 10, especially in this defense. MVP and most improved candidates. Do they have any MVP candidates on this team? No. We know this team's built for the future, and we're not worried about MVP as of right now. As far as most improved, I want to see Zach Wilson be the most improved player on this team. He has to be for him to be the franchise quarterback, the quarterback of the future, and to carry this team to a near 500 record. He has to take a step up and not be what he was last year. If he can become around about a 20th best quarterback in the league, I feel like that's a great step forward for him and into the future for this franchise. But he's the main question mark on this team. There's a lot of question marks, a lot of unknowns, but Zach Wilson is the one that has to step up and push the team into the future. The defense is mediocre. Well, they can be above average, but if Zach Wilson can carry this offense to be average, then this team's looking great for the future for sure. Drop-off candidates. I usually have one in every episode. I don't really foresee a drop-off candidate on this roster. If I had to choose one, is it C.J. Mosley due to age? Is he starting to decline once he's above his peak? They're paying him quite a bit of money. if I had to choose one, I would say C.J. Mosley, but I don't foresee it, I guess you would say. But I would say it's possible for him to be the drop-off candidate. Best and worst outcomes to give the fans a little bit of what they can expect and what's the best possible thing, what's the worst. Best possible outcome is that this offense is a top 15 offense. Zach Wilson becomes a top 20, top 15 quarterback in this offense. They have the weapons. The offensive line is improved. They don't have as many injuries this year. The defense is above average as also. If both sides of the ball are top 15 or better, this team is 9-8, 10-7 potentially. And if they're 10-7, I mean, you're looking at a wild card berth. It would probably be the most surprising wild card berth out of the teams in the NFL this year, that have a realistic possibility. That's the best outcome, is a wild card berth this year, and projecting into the future a great team. Worst outcome, Zach Wilson ends up not being the franchise quarterback. He is as bad as he was last year with his decision making, and doesn't have a 300-yard game again this year. Garrett Wilson doesn't hit. The wide receivers don't get involved due to Zach Wilson's lack of production. The defense, Sauce Gardner is getting torched in man coverage constantly. Jermaine Johnson doesn't hit. The defense is probably below average, and the offense is a bottom third of the league. Then this team is looking at 4-13, 5-12 again this year, and they're possibly looking for another quarterback next year. But that's the worst outcome. I don't expect that, but that is a potential worst outcome. Most intriguing thing is like what I like to end the episodes on, and I've hit on it so many times. But part is two most intriguing things. Does Zach Wilson improve? Does he take that step forward? Can he carry this team into the future? And does Sauce Gardner, does his skill set translate to the NFL? We spoke about his man in coverage versus zone coverage. Didn't allow any touchdowns, but he didn't have much man coverage. Can he translate that to the NFL, where it's going to be a lot more man coverage on this Jets team with this Robert Saleh defense? And can he produce like he did, or not allow the production that he did at Cincy? So between he and Zach Wilson, that's my two things I want to pay attention to with the Jets. And if they can hit, then this entire franchise can hit. I see them going 7-10, great season. 8-9, 9-8. It's not out of the realm of possibility. So can they be a wild card team? It's possible, but we'll see what happens. 7-10 will be a great improvement, but can't wait to see what happens this season. So thanks for watching the video. If you've made it this far, if you have, please hit that like, comment button. Let me know what you agree with, what you didn't agree with. We're running through all the teams. We're working from the least projected wins up to the most projected wins before kickoff. And most importantly and lastly, if you do enjoy what I'm putting out here, please hit that subscribe button. Seeing the subscriptions, the likes, it gives me more want to continue putting out great content. I'm trying to improve weekly, daily almost, with the uploads. We're putting out episodes almost every other day. So just trying to improve, and if I see the feedback, it makes me want to improve even more. But I appreciate you watching, and until the next one, peace.